Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and today I want to talk about the Terminator timeline, which is always a fun topic, and it's going to be really messy by the end, especially if I include the TV show, which I'm not sure I will. If I have enough room, I will include it. And let's begin with the original timeline before any time travel is involved. So John Connor is born in 85. In 97 there is the nuclear war caused by Skynet, the computer that wanted to destroy humanity. And after that there was a war between machines and humans up until Skynet was defeated in 2029. So far very simple timeline, but then Skynet in the very last moment before its defeat decided to use time travel in order to go back and kill John Connor, the leader of the human resistance, believing that without him humanity will not be able to win. And so Skynet sent a Terminator to kill John's mother, Sarah Connor, and the human resistance sent Kyle Reese back into the same spot in time to save Sarah Connor. Sarah Connor became pregnant from Kyle Reese and decided to name her baby John, which seems to indicate that this whole story is a predestinational paradox or a time loop, meaning that this time travel was always supposed to happen. In a deleted scene of the first movie, it's also revealed that the company who ran that factory in which the Terminator was destroyed actually recovered pieces from the Terminator and used them to build Skynet. And so Skynet's own existence is also thanks to this time travel, just like John Connor's existence. Now this presents a few problems. First of all, this would only work in a deterministic universe, meaning time travel cannot really change the past, it only becomes part of history. So anytime you go back to try to change something, you're only fulfilling the same history that was always supposed to be. And so by this theory, it's impossible to really change anything in the past, which is also bad news for things such as free will, our choices changing the future, stuff like that. That means we can never really change the future because any choice we make will be part of the history that was already written. And this contradicts what Kyle told Sarah, because he told her in the first movie that there is no fate but what we make. The future is not written, but by the end of the movie it seems as if it's all a perfect time loop, a paradox, and that you can't really change anything. It will always end up exactly as it was supposed to be. This is of course before we saw the other movies, which showed us that we can change the future. Another problem with this predestinational paradox idea is where did the information itself come from? Meaning, where did John's genetic information come from originally? If it came from this time loop, we can say John Connor is less of a problem because it's not as if he's his own grandfather or something like that, which would be impossible because the genetic information should come from somewhere in the first place, but he's not, he's not Kyle's father or something like that. It's not that big of a loop. Kyle did exist always. He was born somewhere here. He simply did a time jump to the past, and so if the time travel loop always existed, it's not really a problem of the information. The information did exist. It did come from real humans. It did not come from nowhere. However, Skynet's information, the stuff that the factory found and used to build Skynet, where did that information come from originally? Could it come from nothing? And so that doesn't really make much sense. And so one way I can explain it is that Skynet would have been built anyway, even if they didn't found those pieces. But them finding those pieces could have made Skynet more advanced than he was originally. So Skynet was always going to appear in 97. That's the point in which he becomes self-aware. So that would have happened anyway. However, the technology that Skynet has, his Terminators, became more advanced thanks to their technology being found in 84. And that knowledge didn't come from nowhere because it simply came from the future. So those Terminators would have been built anyway. But thanks to the fact that this technology jumped to the past, that means suddenly Skynet had more advanced Terminators in the future, which can explain the T-1000, which did not exist in the original timeline because then he would have sent the T-1000 to do the job, the most advanced Terminator. But it didn't exist in the original timeline. And so according to my theory, from this point on, this is all a slightly different timeline to the original one. And also we can say maybe originally John Connor was not really the son of Kyle Reese. Maybe before the time travel, she had a son by someone else who also ended up becoming the leader of humanity in the future. Maybe because he had her genes and she's so awesome, she's such a badass that her son would be a badass no matter who the father is. And so John Connor himself actually was replaced by his own genetic sibling, which is now fathered by Kyle Reese, and still ended up fulfilling the same destiny. And this time with Sarah's knowledge of what's going to happen, it might have boosted up John Connor himself as well. Just like Skynet got boosted up by a few years by the technology that was left in the past, John Connor himself also was boosted up to a better version of John Connor because he's been trained by Sarah Connor, who now knew the future and therefore was preparing John from childhood to become the leader in the future, which means he might have been a better leader. And so Skynet still gets defeated in the future despite having the more advanced technology. But this time, before being defeated, it sent another Terminator, the T-1000, back to 95 to kill John Connor himself before Judgment Day. And the Resistance sent a Terminator which they reprogrammed to protect John and sent him back to the same time. Now this time Sarah Connor decided to try to change the future. It's actually been stated she tried that already by blowing up a computer factory somewhere in the past, but it did not have an effect. She only got locked up in a mental institute after trying to tell people, to warn people about the future. No one believed her, so she was stuck in a mental asylum. But after escaping, after having the T-800 on her side, she decided to blow up Cyberdyne to prevent that future from happening. Also, Dyson got killed, and apparently they did manage to delay Judgment Day, but not stop it completely, and apparently it only got delayed a little bit. And I'll draw it as a separate timeline simply for simplicity's sake. So 97 came and there was no war, but according to Terminator 3, it simply got delayed to 2003. And the war with the machines lasted until 2033. And these extra years also gave Skynet more time to develop even stronger Terminators, such as the TX, which it sent back in time to eliminate the lieutenants of John Connor, as well as ensuring its own development, because we did see the TX apparently helping out Skynet to rise. We did see her killing a bunch of them, which means already the future will not be the same as the future where she came from, because she did succeed in eliminating a lot of them. So we have the TX traveling back here to just before the new Judgment Day. And we have Kate Brewster, who sent another T-800 Terminator to try to save both her and John Connor in the past. This is T-900, this is a new model, who has a few extra abilities, such as the ability to remove his fuel cells and to use them as a weapon and to blow himself up. This is something the original Terminator was not capable of. Now, because the knowledge that John Connor got about the future, he knew that the same Terminator who saves him here is the same one who killed him in the future. And because his lieutenants got eliminated, that means it will not be the same future. So this will create yet another timeline in which he probably will manage to avoid getting killed in the future, because he got this information warning him about not trusting the Arnold he sees in the future, who will come to kill him. After that we had Terminator Salvation, which was taking place in 2018, in which John says that this is not the future that his mother told him about. And also, according to him, there are much more advanced Terminators before they are supposed to exist. So that means, as I said before, that because Skynet got upgraded basically by also getting knowledge from the future and all kinds of Terminator parts, that means it would be able to create more advanced Terminators sooner rather than later. So remember, the knowledge that Sarah had was from the original Kyle Reese, who she met in 84, who told her about the whole timeline where the Terminators will appear, the ones with plastic skin, all that stuff. But because Skynet got the future pieces from the Terminators of the original timeline, that means they got built faster, and so that explains why John in Salvation says that these Terminators appear before they are supposed to appear. And also we have Marcos Wright, who is a more advanced Terminator than the ones who are supposed to exist in this time. Now, there was no time travel in this movie, so there are no more interruptions. But in Terminator 5, they say that someone went back in time to the 70s in order to once again kill Sarah Connor before the events of the first movie. So presumably it happened somewhere from this point in a different timeline to that one. Because we once again see John Connor meeting Kyle Reese, and it's not the same way as he met him in Salvation. So that means it had to have been in a different timeline. However, John still had the exact same scars that we see him get in Salvation. So how can we explain the different Kyle Reese? Well, it might be simply a guy with the same name. So it's possible John Connor discovered that the Kyle Reese that he saved in Salvation was actually a different Kyle Reese, and only later he found the true one, the real Kyle Reese, that was his real father. Maybe he did some genetic tests, maybe he tested out the Kyle Reese he met in Salvation and realized it's not actually his father. And only later he met a different Kyle Reese, and after doing genetic tests realized that was his real father. And meanwhile Skynet decided to send another Terminator back in time to 97 to kill Sarah Connor before the events of the first movie. So we have another time travel by a new T-1000 and another Arnold Terminator again being sent to the same time to save Sarah Connor in the past. And that Terminator ended up raising Sarah Connor and living with her up until 84, where they destroyed the original Terminator in the first movie as well as the T-1000. And by using the CPU from the first Terminator, they could now build their own time machine in order to jump to the future to try to prevent Judgment Day. This, by the way, was the stupidest part in Terminator Genisys, because they had decades to prepare to prevent it, but for some stupid reason they decide to jump right to the last moment before Judgment Day to try to prevent it, and before even giving birth to John Connor, which basically erases John Connor from existence if he was never born in 84. And Kyle Reese also traveled back in time. This is a bit of a problem as well. Did she meet the Kyle Reese from the original timeline, or did she meet the one that was sent from the final timeline, the one in after Salvation? Since he looks a lot different, I would say this is the new Kyle Reese, because, you know, because of all the different events here, all of this got erased, it got changed, it got delayed, and that means Kyle Reese's parents had sex at a different time than in the original timeline, and so the new Kyle Reese is a genetic sibling of himself, which explains why he looks different. And so there was another Kyle Reese sent from here, from the new timeline, by the latest John Connor. And so it's possible there were actually two Kyle Reeses in the past, but she met the new version of him, and so a new Kyle Reese, who she meets in 84, and together with him they jump to the future to 2017. At first she plans to jump to 97, but Kyle Reese informs her that because he was seeing a vision during his time travel, that the timeline changed. He knew that Judgment Day no longer happens in 97. Is yet another change in the timeline, because it was supposed to be delayed until 2003. But I guess because of all those changes in the past, because that company never recovered those pieces of the first Terminator, and maybe other changes Sarah Connor did in the past, maybe trying to sabotage the creation of Skynet in other ways which we didn't see. So from this point they're planning to go to the future to 97 to try to prevent Judgment Day. Now this seems to indicate that the Terminator that was sent back to the 70s still thought the Judgment Day will happen in 97, which is a bit strange. If he was sent from the new timeline, then he would know about the new date, which for him would be 23. So why did the Terminator think it's going to be in 97 like in the original timeline? If the original timeline was changed, then why are Terminators still coming back from that timeline? So it doesn't really make much sense, unless the Terminator was lying because he knew that's the way things were in the original timeline. So maybe that Terminator knew that as a result of something he did in the past, it will once again happen the original way. Or maybe it was all a result of that latest T-1000 Terminator, which was sent not only to eliminate Sarah Connor in the past, but also to ensure Skynet gets developed as fast as possible. And so it's possible that new T-1000 actually manages to restore something closer to the original timeline. So we don't know exactly what happened. We also don't know who is the one who sent the new Terminator back in time. It was said it's not John Connor. Someone else did that and we never knew who. And so we can say something happened that created yet another timeline similar to the original one, in which the nuclear war was in 97. And from this new timeline, someone sent yet another Arnold Terminator, two before the first movie, and only then a new Kyle Reese was sent from the future. So I would say that the new Kyle Reese that was sent was actually a different version than the one in the first movie, because of all these time changes. It's possible he was born under different circumstances, and therefore he's a genetic sibling of himself, similar to the original one but different. So Kyle Reese was sent back after those other Terminators were already sent back by someone else who is not John Connor. That's why he's unaware of it. There must have been a different time machine, and only after all of those changes happened, only then Kyle Reese was sent back in time from the new timeline, in which Skynet also took some kind of humanoid form and manages to possess John Connor. So Skynet turns John Connor into a Terminator. And also thanks to Kyle going back in time, I guess that also helped them kill the T-1000. It was no longer able to help Skynet get created by 97, so that once again cancels 97 and postpones Judgment Day. And because he was going through the time machine, he somehow got visions from an alternate timeline in which his parents never died in the nuclear war, in which he lived a normal life. Somehow he got a mystical vision of that alternate timeline while going through the time machine, and that's why he was able to tell Sarah Connor and the Terminator that they should not jump to 97, but instead to jump to 2017 to stop the nuclear war. Now this is the stupidest part of the movie because they had so many decades to do a lot of stuff to prevent that future, but I guess Sarah Connor just wanted to live a normal life, and so they decide to jump to 2017 in order to stop Skynet in the very last second. And they're totally forgetting to first give birth to John Connor, which means they basically eliminated him from the timeline. He never gets born now, and so they jump to the last moment to try to prevent Judgment Day, while the Terminator stays behind and takes the long route to get there. And John Connor, who was turned into a Terminator, was sent back in time as well to some unknown point in the time, and also ended up with them doing the opposite of what they are doing, trying to make sure Skynet gets developed. He gets killed by the Terminator, and they manage to blow up this new Skynet and supposedly saving the future. And the Arnold Terminator turns into a liquid Terminator by falling into that pool of liquid polyalloy and uploading himself to it, I guess. And so this is the end of Terminator Genisys. And so the future apparently is saved, even though in the post-credits we see that some remnant of Skynet did remain, which means something might still happen in the future. But for now, they once again saved humanity and prevented Judgment Day. So as you see, it's all a whole bunch of a mess. And this doesn't even include the Terminator TV show, which I guess I will have to do in a separate video. And now I will talk about the new Terminator, Terminator Dark Fate, which is supposedly ignoring all the Terminator sequels except for Terminator 2. And according to the rumors of the new movie, and stop the video here if you don't want to hear spoilers, but apparently it's going to be revealed that multiple Terminators were sent back to before 97, not just the one they saw in Terminator 2. There were actually other Terminators around before they changed the timeline, and one of those Terminators actually manages to kill John Connor after the events of the second movie, and Sarah Connor remains on her own and is hunting down those other Terminators. And so that will be a whole other timeline as well, which doesn't really fit the other sequels because, Sarah Connor was supposed to die from cancer, and so why is she still even alive in the new movie, which will be taking place in our current day, but in a new timeline in which Judgment Day didn't happen, but there are still Terminators from that original timeline sent from the future before they erase that future. And so I guess I don't have room, so I will have to leave that to a separate video, and I will try to include the Terminator TV show as well, and maybe offer some theories to explain how all these different timelines got created and how they kind of cancel each other out and constantly retconning the timeline. So I will have to maybe find a bigger board to try to fit it all together. So anyway, that's it for now. I hope it's been fun, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.